welcome to this episode of How to Run a Successful Business and Still Have a Life. My name is Stacey Morgan, and today's episode is brought to you by Simply Business Accelerator. As we're heading into our next session, we are going to be talking about something that I love. We're going to be talking about leadership and teams. If you are leading people, then I would love you to join us because there are so many different facets in leadership and management that are so important in running a successful business. And that's what we're going to be talking about in Simply Business Accelerator. You can enroll now at simplystacymorgan.com. Today's episode, we are going to be carrying on from the series that we're doing on productivity, talking about the Pomodoro technique and deep work. And these two things you may have thought about before, you may have heard about before, but I don't know how many of us are actually practicing it on a weekly basis. And I can tell you that these two different techniques have made such a big difference to my productivity and such a big difference when it comes to the quality of the work that I'm doing now when it comes to running all three of my businesses. And I know that it's something that if you took the time to implement, that you would see big differences too. Let's start by talking about the Pomodoro technique. In the last episode, we talked about to-do lists and the importance of having a really good structure around your to-do list. If you didn't get a copy of our to-do list and you would love one, you can get one at simplystacymorgan.com/downloads. My to-do list is kind of like my Bible. I carry it with me everywhere. I have it no matter where I go. It fits nicely next to my laptop in my handbag. And it is kind of like the sail, the mast. It points to where I'm going. It points me in the direction that I need to go for that day or for that week. And I know that you can get power out of that as well if you start harnessing your to-do list. But when it comes to actually actioning the things on my to-do list, the Pomodoro technique has been a complete game changer for me. I used to sit down to do work and I would kind of think, I'm going to start with this one and then I'll do this one. And then I'd check Facebook and then I'd go and get a cup of tea and then I'd come back and then I'd scroll through Instagram for a bit and then I'd check my email and then I'd get lost in my email and then I'd just reply. I'll just reply to this one. I'll just reply. Does this sound familiar? Hopefully it's not just me. The Pomodoro technique is all about managing your time. It's a time management method and it's been around since the 80s. And it's all about using a timer to break down the work that you are doing into segments. We talked in the first episode about, what success means to you and how you're going to use your time and money and energy in order to create your own version of success. We talked about how things expand to the amount of time that you have for them, or, money expands. If you start earning more, then you start spending more. And I find that with time, if I give myself 3 hours to get a paper done, then it will probably take me about 3 hours. If I gave myself 1 hour to do it, I could probably get pretty close to getting it done or get it done in that amount of time. And I find that, time expands to the amount of time that we give a certain task. And so I've had to really become quite disciplined in making sure that I am predicting how much time each of the tasks on my to-do list will take, and then using that time as well, using that time well in order to make sure that I'm getting the most out of the task that I have in front of me, but also about the time that I have set aside to do that task. So the Pomodoro technique talks about using a timer to break work down, usually into 25-minute increments. So you set the timer and you start working. And what I like to do is I like to assign certain tasks to that time. I don't just kind of go, I'll work for 25 minutes on whatever's in front of me. I'm really conscious about setting out at the beginning of the day and saying, okay, in this first session, I'm going to tackle X, Y, and Z. And in the second session, I'm just going to do, A. And making sure that I know exactly what's going to happen in each of those sessions. Because I think if I was just to sit down and say, I'll just get whatever done in whatever time I can do, I wouldn't be as disciplined and I wouldn't get as much done. So I set the timer for 25 minutes. After the 25-minute timer goes off, I stand up from my desk. I set a timer for 5 minutes. I walk around. I have a stretch. I grab a cup of tea. I, get away from the space that I was in, because I think that's really good for my brain and for my body to kind of get moving and to look at something different other than my computer screen. If I'm, really dying to catch up on whatever's been happening during that day, then I'll spend that 5 minutes walking around and scrolling Instagram and checking my email or doing something else. But I try not to get too distracted in that 5 minutes. And then once the timer goes off, we go again, 25 more minutes. And the Pomodoro technique is about doing that 4 times and then giving yourself a really big break. So that use like a half an hour break or an hour break, where you really remove yourself from the, your natural habitat where you're working. Get yourself completely out of the space. Go and stick your feet on the ground outside, get grounded, listen to the birds sing, breathe in some fresh air, and then you come back to your desk, completely revitalized and ready to go again. So I've really been using the Pomodoro technique, especially on those days where I find that my to-do list is really overwhelming. There's lots of stuff on there and you really, really want to get stuck into it. And it's the days when I schedule my deep work that the Pomodoro technique is the most valuable and I get the most out of it. What is deep work, you might ask? Well, deep work is what I put aside when I have days when I have lots on my to-do list and I want to get really stuck in and really get some achievement done, really get some stuff done. And that deep work, I don't do that every single day. Some people have the luxury to be able to do it every single day, but I find that my days, because I've got Henry not in daycare every day of the week, and I've got, the kids that I'm running to and from school, and also because my productive time is in the morning, I find that there's usually one, if I'm lucky, 2 days a week where I really get stuck into some deep work. And so that deep work time is a really big chunk of time, 3 hours, 4 hours that I put aside, where I turn off all the distractions. I turn off the notifications on my email. I make sure that I'm not picking up my phone. I put my phone on the desk face down so it's not flashing and not lighting up and distracting me. If I'm really disciplined, I put it in the other room, but I can't tell you that I do that all the time. And so what I do is during that deep work time, well, firstly, I look forward to that deep work time. If I know that I've got deep work coming up on Thursday, I go, oh, how cool is that? I'm usually in pretty comfy clothes. I usually work out of my home office and I just get some time with no distractions just to get stuck into it. And so in that deep work time, that's when I'm using the Pomodoro technique. That's when I'm really focused. That's when I'm doing really big project-based things that take a lot of brain power, things where I'm going to need to, do one document, but then think about the budget that goes with that document, and then think about the documentation that will need to go with the budget that will need to go with that document. Those things that we have to do that kind of have lots of moving parts. Those are the things that I really kind of lock into that deep work time. And as I said, I really look forward to it. It's really a joy when I do get to spend time getting stuck into some deep work, because not only do I look forward to it in the beginning, but once I've done it and I've really got a lot of stuff done, I get that, big shot of adrenaline and I feel really, really great afterwards as well. So if you're not blocking out time in your calendar for deep work, and on my Google Calendar, sage is the color that I use for my deep work time. So I encourage you to color code it so that you can see it coming up and look forward to it as well. If you're not blocking out time for deep work during your week or during your month, I totally encourage you to do that right now. Don't even think about it. Pick up your calendar, find 2 or 3 hours this week or next week, stick it in, make it happen. And if you are not using the Pomodoro technique, and you don't need one of those fancy Pomodoro tomato twisty timer things, you don't need to go to the $2 shop to collect yourself one of those. You can just use the timer on your phone, or you can just use the clock radio that you've got on your desk, or whatever works for you. And I really encourage you to try out that technique, see if it works for you, see if you are more productive, and then report back and let me know. I would love it if you have your little setup on your desk going with your timer and your phone, turned over, and then let me know exactly what's working for you and whether you get more work done when you're putting that time aside and using that technique. Of course, if you do that, post it on your Insta story and tag me. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, do exactly the same. Today's podcast was brought to you by Simply Business Accelerator. Of course, we are going to be talking about leadership and team, and our next couple of podcast episodes are going to be talking about leadership and the biggest leadership lessons that I have learned as well. And if you haven't joined our Facebook group, where we are talking about leadership quite often, how to run a successful business and still have a life, you can search for us inside the Facebook platform. We would love to see you there. When all parts of a successful business are really working quite healthily, then you're setting yourself up for great success in the future. If you don't know how healthy your business is, then take the 20-minute survey that we have on our website. You can get to that by clicking on the Learn from Stacey tab on simplystacey.morgan.com. And we are here every week giving you bite-sized pieces of business tips and tangible takeaways to help you take your business and your life to the next level. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Thank you so much. Share this episode with a business bestie of yours if you've found it helpful. Test out both of those methods and let me know if they work. And I will talk to you next week.